Welcome geometry students to class today on Wednesday, December 18th. Hope you guys are doing well and hope you're ready for a quick little video session. Number one, your exam, Haley. Your exam is tomorrow, I believe at 8:15 in the morning, so be ready for that. You other four students in the first hour class, your exam is Friday, and I believe that is at 8:15 also. Okay, so be ready for that. That's basically it. We had one extra day worked in case something came up, whether I became sick or whether a class period was canceled due to a weather situation or whatever. I always have one extra day worked in, and nothing has been canceled, so we have an extra day today. So I am telling you now, this is not to be a class period where you do nothing. I did tell you though on the last video that you would have a very, very short video, just announcements and stuff, and then you could study for your exam today. So you are to do one of two things. I want you to study for any exams that you might have today or tomorrow, or you can watch the rest of this video. And you might say, well, Mr. Earhart, what's the rest of the video? I'm not going to say who, but one student emailed me yesterday, and asked me if I could go over a general review one more time, kind of summing everything up from the 6 review days, which I can do. That's actually not a very long video, and it's pretty simple to do. So this might be very, very beneficial for you, or it might not be, but I did tell that student I would do that. And actually I've kind of done that every day, to be honest with you. Like, we covered one test, the next day I reviewed. Every day I kept accumulatively reviewing what we had done, but that's fine. I don't mind doing it. And so you're going to have to make that choice whether you watch the rest of the video or work on something else. But if Mr. Harmon or whoever's watching you guys, emails me and says, hey, the students were sleeping, were they allowed to do it? Well, no, this is not a goof off period. It's work on something or watch this video, okay? So that's basically it. I know at least one of you will be watching this. I know that one person asked me to do this, and it's not going to be very long. All of you probably ought to watch it. It's probably going to be no longer than 10 to 15, 20 minutes max long, but here we go. We started off reviewing test number 6, okay? And I told you you'd have to know the definition of a polygon. Now, what I meant by that was this right here. Okay, this right here. I need you to be able to look at shapes and sizes and tell me if they're a polygon, like numbers 1, 2, and 3. And then if it is a polygon, look at number 2 here, tell me if it's a triangle, quadrilateral, pentagon, hexagon, heptagon, or octagon. Okay? So that's what I meant by numbers 1 and 2. Number 3, the sum of the interior angles of a quadrilateral is 360. And so what I meant by that was a problem like this right here, numbers 4 and 5, or number 4. Notice how all 4 of these angles here have to add up to 360. It's a quadrilateral. It has 4 sides. So be able to work out a problem like this. Over here I have a trapezoid because I have one set of parallel sides. Now here's what I said to you on the review sheet here. I said you need to know the legs of any trapezoid are supplementary and the legs are the non-parallel sides. Okay, let's go back to the test here. Now let's scoot ahead here a little bit to like number 20 right here. This is a trapezoid, and the non-parallel sides are called the legs. So this is a leg, and angle A and angle D have to add up to 180. Side BC is a leg because it's with the non-parallel sides. Angles B and C have to add up to 180. So angle B would be 110 because 110 plus 70 is 180, and this angle would be 125 because 125 plus 55 is 180. Okay, so that's what I was referring to. Now also on your review, if you'll notice right here, it said this. It said the base angles of an isosceles trapezoid are congruent. Notice it has to be an isosceles trapezoid. The bases of a trapezoid are the parallel sides. So with that in mind, here's what I was saying. On this problem here, and I should have marked these two sides congruent, but we're going to assume we have an isosceles trapezoid here. So if we do, this is a base. That means if this angle is 78, then y is 78. And if this angle is 102, then this angle is 102. That's only true on isosceles triangles, okay? Look at number 19. I mean, isosceles trapezoids, excuse me. Look at number 19. This is an isosceles trapezoid. Well, I know if this is 110, then I know A has to be 110. And also, if this is 110, remember this is a leg, and the leg angles of a trapezoid are supplementary. So if this is 110, angle A has to be 110, and this is 110, this has to be 70 because 110 plus 70 is 180, and if C is 70, D has to be 70 because base angles of an isosceles trapezoid are congruent. Now I know I'm going fast, but one of the beauties of having a video class is you can back it up and listen to it if I go too fast, okay? So let's continue on. In a parallelogram, both sets of opposite angles are congruent and consecutive angles are supplementary. So I think we used that probably right here in number 6. This is a parallelogram, and I told you this is 35. So opposite angles are congruent, so if angle D is 35, angle B is 35, and then consecutive angles are supplementary, so if D is 35, then A would have to be 145, and if A is 145, then C has to be 145. So just like that, if I know one angle inside a parallelogram, I can find the other angles, okay? Know the 5 ways to prove that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Know those 5 ways, and you're going to use them on like this right here. I'm going to ask you, tell whether the quadrilateral is a parallelogram, and if it is, tell me why. If it's not, tell me why it's not. Now, the 5 ways to prove that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram is both sets of opposite angles are congruent, or both sets of opposite sides are congruent, or both sets of opposite sides are parallel, or one angle is supplementary to both of its consecutive angles, or the diagonals of the quadrilateral bisect each other. Those are the 5 ways to prove that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Then I said know the formula for the midsegment, which is 2 times the midsegment equals base 1 plus base 2. So coming over here, let's kind of scroll down and look for a problem like that. And you're like, Mr. Earhart, you said this video would be 15, maybe 20 minutes, and you're taking a long time. Well, remember, each test gets shorter and shorter, okay, as we go along. Some of these are really short. So, numbers 21 and 22. Notice in 21, I gave you the midsegment of a trapezoid, but I did not give you one of the bases. Find that base using the formula 2ms equals b1 plus b2. In number 22, I gave you the 2 bases, but I did not give you the midsegment. Use the formula right here, 2ms equals b1 plus b2. And then know the definitions of your 6 special quadrilaterals. Know this chart here is going to be very helpful to you if you will learn this. And you're not allowed to have it written down. Okay, there's really nothing you can have written down on a sheet of paper for the test. But know this, a rectangle is always a parallelogram, an isosceles trapezoid is always a trapezoid, a square is always these 3 things, a rhombus is always this. Well, Mr. Earhart, how would you test us on that? Well, I mean, like this right here, look at 23, 24, and 25. I mean, the question is, determine whether the quadrilateral is a trapezoid, isosceles trapezoid, parallelogram, or rectangle, or rhombus, or square. And you had to list out everything that it was. Or look at these problems back here, right here. You had to tell me different things about each figure. Consecutive angles are congruent. Which one of these, could be more than one, could be 1, 2, 3, or 4, which one of these have consecutive angles that are congruent? And so you've got to know your definitions of your 6 polygons, okay? All right, that was a review of test number 6. I'm going to go in the exact same order, I believe, that I did during the week. So the first test we covered was chapter 6. Let me grab a drink of water. Now we're going to go to test 1. Okay, let's check off these first 2. Be able to look at patterns of shapes and numbers and make a conjecture. Be able to look, I'm sorry, let's just look at number 1. I apologize. Look at the patterns of figures, shapes, or numbers and make a conjecture as to what will be next. Well, that's problems like this. Look at these patterns here and make a conjecture as to what would come next. Look at 21 and 22. Look at these patterns of numbers, figure out what the pattern is, and decide what the next number or the next 2 numbers would be. Okay? And then next on our list, it says, be able to look at a statement and give a counterexample that proves a statement wrong. So, All rectangles with an area of 12 square feet have the same perimeter. I'm not going to go over that because I did that in the video already. You can go back and look at the videos on these reviews. Okay, but all rectangles, what we did is I gave you, again, I'm not going to do it, but I simply said one rectangle was a 4x3 and one rectangle was a 6x2. They both have 12 for their area, excuse me for yawning, but they have a different perimeter. That was a counterexample. If the sum of two numbers is positive, then the two numbers must be positive. I gave you a counterexample. I told you it wasn't true. I could give a negative number and a positive number, and their sum still comes out to be positive. So be able to give me counterexamples that prove things wrong. Now, for number 3 here on your review, what I said was this. I said be able to look at a picture like this right here and be able to tell me things about it. Coplanar points, collinear points, how segments intersect at a certain point, the intersection line of two planes, etc., etc. Here's the problems right here on the test, and if you want to see those on the test, they were right here. Right here. Here's the exact same questions I asked you about this figure, so be able to do that. Moving on to number 4, given segments, be able to add segments and subtract segments, and you'll find that right here on numbers 30 and 31 right here. I gave you 2 segments, you had to add them together. I gave you a whole segment and part of one, you had to subtract to find ST. Number 4 or number 5, given angles, be able to add angles and subtract angles. So right here, I gave you a straight angle is 180. I gave you part of the angle. You had to subtract and find this angle. The whole angle is 150. You had to subtract and find this angle here. Also, if I would have given you 2 angles side by side, sorry again for you, I apologize, a little tired. If I would have given you 2 angles side by side here, I might ask you to add them together and give me the measurement of the whole angle. And that's all that I'm asking you to do on those types of problems. And then be able to give 3 names to one angle. So right here, I said give me 3 names to this angle. Of course, it'd be angle ABC, angle CBA, and angle B. Okay, so that's a nice review of test number 1. Let's move on to test number 2. Test number 2. We started off by saying if I give you the midpoint of a segment, be able to find the whole segment, or if I give you part of it, be able to find the whole thing, whatever. And so I think I'm on the wrong test here. Give me just a second to get organized here, and I don't think that's it. 612, there it is right there. Okay, and so here's what I'm talking about. I'm telling you right here, m's the midpoint, and this is 15, so AM would be 15. Here I'm telling you m's the midpoint. I know because AM has a slash and MB has a slash, so they're congruent. So if I tell you the whole length, divide it in half and know those 2 lengths. Same thing here. Notice AM has a mark and MB has a mark, so they're congruent. So be able to set these 2 equal and solve. Find the coordinates of the midpoint when given 2 points. Know the midpoint formula. And of course the midpoint formula is x plus x over 2, comma, y plus y over 2. That's the midpoint formula. Excuse me. And so on the test, the problems looked like this. Right here, number 16, find the coordinates of the midpoint of the segment that has these 2 endpoints. So be able to find the midpoint. Also, we said when given an angle with an angle bisector, be able to find the measurement of the bigger angle or one of the smaller angles. And here's what I meant by that. Look at numbers 17 and 18. I stated right here that segment BD is an angle bisector. So if this is 84, then you should be able to find also the measure of ABD. It would be 84 also. And in number 18, it was assumed, and I think I went over this when I gave this test to you back when we took this test, on number 18, BD here is also an angle bisector. So it cuts ABC in half. So if it cuts them in half, then, wow, that's not what I want. Let's see if I can fix this. And so I'm cutting angle ABC in half, so 5x plus 19 would equal 74. So be able to do problems like that when you are given an angle bisector. Remember that a straight line, when given an angle, be able to find its complement and its supplement. And so we did that right here on the test. The measure of angle R is 12. Find the complement and find the supplement. So be able to do that. Remember that the straight line is a straight angle. It has a measurement of 180, and all the angles coming off of the straight line must add up to 180. So look at number 20. Notice I have a straight angle right here, and I have a ray coming off of it. This angle with 2y, let me grab a quick drink here. And the angle right here with 3y, if you add those two together, they will add up to 180 because they're coming off of a straight line here. Okay, same thing with 21. These two angles will add up to 180. And then next, I believe I mentioned, know that vertical angles are congruent. So we know that vertical angles are congruent. So if this is 85, angle 2 has to be 85. And then angle 3 and 85 degrees here are consecutive angles. They're side by side on a straight line. So 85 degrees and angle 3 have to add up to 180. So this would be 95 degrees. And if 3 is 95 degrees, then angle 1 would be 95 degrees. So be able to work out problems like that. Be able to rewrite a given statement as a conditional. If you'll look at number 23, it says an apple a day keeps the doctor away. You would rewrite that like that. If you eat an apple every day, then you will not have to visit the doctor. That's taking a statement and writing it as a conditional or an if-then statement. And then also in your notes here I said be able to use the law of detachment and be able to use the law of syllogism. So law of detachment, if E is between D and F, then DF equals DE plus EF. And then we know it's given to us. E is between D and F. Look at it like this. If I said, let's see, if it snows, there will be no school tomorrow. And then the next day I said, hey, it snowed. Then we would know there's no school. Because I said, if it snows, there'll be no school. So if this, then this. And then I say, look, E is between D and F. So you then would write DF equals DE plus EF. Law of syllogism. If it is hot today, May will go to the beach. If May goes to the beach, I will also go. Now, what that means is if it's hot, May's going to go to the beach, and if May goes to the beach, I'm going to go too. So I can basically say this: if it's hot today, I'm going to the beach. Because if it's hot, May's going. And if May's going, I'm going. So if it is hot, I will go to the beach. Okay? And that's using the law of syllogism. Okay? And that's test number 2. All right, let's move on to test number 4. Test number 4. All right, here we go. Be able to classify triangles by their sides. Be able to classify triangles by their angles. Scalene, equilateral, isosceles for the sides. Right, equiangular, obtuse, and acute for their angles. So on the test, I will give you some triangles with sides only. Classify those. I will give you some triangles with angles. Angle measurements or markings only. Be able to classify those. Okay? All right, then I also said, know that the exterior angle of a triangle is equal to the sum of the remote interior angles. Know that the sum of the interior angles of a triangle is 180. So problems like this right here. I mean, I know to add these two angles together, subtract from 180, I'll get angle number 1. Over here, I know that this angle right here, angle 1, and this angle here that's 57 degrees, I know if I add them together, they will equal the exterior angle. Always. Okay? Always. And then over here, that leads me to my next point. Know that when two sides of a triangle are congruent, then their opposite angles are congruent. And know that when two angles of a triangle are congruent, their opposite sides are congruent. So here, we'll just kind of scroll down to 22, 23, 24, and 25. Or excuse me, 22 and 23. On number 22, notice that we have two sides that have marks through them. So we know those two sides are congruent. So we know their opposite angles are congruent. So if this angle is 2x, this angle over here is 2x. So now you could say 2x plus 6x equals 180. add them together. Over here on number 23, here we have two angles congruent. So if two angles are congruent, their opposite sides are congruent. So this side here that's measured 30 and this side here that's measured x plus 12, you can set them equal and solve, because when two in a triangle are congruent, their opposite sides are congruent. Know how to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for the missing side in a right triangle. We know how to do that. Here's two right triangles. I know two sides. Use the Pythagorean to find the missing third side. Know how to find the distance between 2 points on a given coordinate. And by the way, that's the distance formula. The distance formula is x minus x, quantity squared, plus y minus y, quantity squared, and the square root of that whole thing. Okay, that's how you find the distance formula. And there's a problem right here. Find the distance between these 2 points. Okay. Be able to take the lengths of the three sides of a triangle and decide if the triangle is obtuse, acute, or right. And what we said is, if you take the two shorter sides and square them and compare them to the longer side squared, if you get out, I'm going to go ahead and cut and paste this so I have this to use. If you get out an expression where this left side is less than this side, that means you have an obtuse triangle. And if you get out, if you use the same formula, shorter side squared, add them together and square the longer side, and if this left side is greater than the right side, then that means you have an acute triangle. And then if you use this exact same model or formula or thought process, whatever it would be, and you end up getting the left side and the right side are equal, then that means you have a right triangle. So if you want to look at some problems like that, the problems would be right here, like this. Right here, I give you the lengths of three sides, number 27, and I give you the lengths of three sides, number 28. All that's in a video that we went over. So be able to decide just by looking at the three sides of a triangle whether it's an acute, obtuse, or right triangle. Okay. All right. Moving on then to number 9. Be able. We just talked about that. Number 10, know that the smallest angle of a triangle is across from the shortest side, and know that the shortest side of a triangle is across from the smallest angle. Or you could say that backwards. You could say the largest angle is across from the longest side, and the longest side is across from the largest angle. However you want to say that, it doesn't matter. And we did some problems like this right here. We said, look at number 30, we said list out the angles from smallest to largest. So you start with the smallest side and go across as the smallest angle. Then 31, list the sides from longest to shortest. So you start with the biggest angle and go across, that's the longest side. Okay, so be able to do that. And then know how to find the lengths and partial lengths of the lines that make the centroid of a triangle. And so that'd be problems like this right here, and we did those on the video for you already. I won't get into working those out. Okay, so let me grab another drink here. And we are truly moving right along. All right, test number 3. Let me come over here and get rid of this right here. I think it's test number 3. Okay, know the 4 special sets of angles when 2 parallel lines are cut by a transversal. Alternate interior angles congruent, alternate exterior angles congruent, corresponding angles congruent, consecutive interior angles are supplementary. And the type of problems I gave you were ones like this right here. Here's parallel lines cut by a transversal. I give you one angle. You should be able to find, if I have 2 parallel lines cut by a transversal, students, I can give you any of these one angles, any one, and you can find the rest of them. Okay? So be able to do that knowing what we just covered a second ago. Okay? And then down here for 17, 18, and 19, what I wanted you guys to be able to do was this. Know the 5 ways to prove that 2 lines are parallel. When 2 lines are cut by a transversal so that alternate interior angles are congruent, alternate exterior angles are congruent, corresponding angles are congruent, consecutive interior angles are supplementary, or 2 lines are perpendicular to the same line. When that happens, when any of the scenarios happen, then you know that you have parallel lines. And so that's what I'm testing you on. So the problems on the test look something like this. These 2 lines here. Are A and B parallel? Maybe not, maybe so. Yes, they are. How do I know that? Because 60 and 60 are corresponding angles, so your reason would be yes, because corresponding angles are congruent. Over here, are A and B parallel? Yes, they are. How do I know that? Well, angle 50 degrees and angle 30 degrees are consecutive interior angles, or consecutive or same side interior angles, and they have to be supplementary. Well, if you add those up, you get 180, so they're supplementary. Number 19, yes, A and B are parallel because they're both perpendicular to the same line. Okay, these are the 5 reasons that you really need to know to prove that 2 lines are parallel. And then test number 5, and we're finally done. Be able to list out, well, first let me X out of this test right here. Be able to list out corresponding congruent sides and angles of congruent triangles. So if I state a triangle is congruent to a triangle, you should be able to list out the corresponding congruent angles and the corresponding congruent sides. You also should be able to look at diagrams like these 2 and say, yes, they're congruent triangles, and tell me why. And then write a congruent statement, something like this: ABC is congruent to DEF, or you would say, no, they're not congruent. Same thing with number 12. Yes, they're congruent, or no, they're not. If they are, tell me why or how you know that, and then write the congruent statement for me. So be able to do that. And that's right here. Your ways to do that are side, side angle, angle, side angle, and hypotenuse leg. Remember, hypotenuse leg only works on right triangles. Understand when 2 line segments have a common endpoint on an angle bisector and are perpendicular to opposite sides of the triangle, then these 2 segments are congruent. And we looked at problems like this right here. Right here. Let me scroll up just a little bit. Numbers 13 and 14. Notice that I have a congruent mark here and a congruent mark here. That means BD is an angle bisector. And notice that AD and CD both intersect at D, and they're both perpendicular to the outside of the angle. That means AD is congruent to DC. Same thing over here. So be able to solve problems like that. Okay, and that's it. I just went over the entire review for the test. I hope that this helps you guys. This is what the one student asked me to do, and I hope this is what he or she was wanting. And so there you go. If you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to email me. Remember, Haley, your test is tomorrow. You other 4 students, your test will be on Friday. Email if you have any questions. Have a good rest of the day.